They say parents are supposed to protect your future. But nobody talks about what happens when they quietly sell it behind your back and expect you to smile while burning. My name is Ariana Vale. I'm 27 years old, and I'm speaking to you from Vancouver, a city where the mountains look peaceful even when your life is falling apart. People call me quiet, soft-spoken, private, the type of woman who minds her business, pays her bills, and keeps her heart in a drawer where nobody can reach it. But what they don't know is, quiet people hear everything. And quiet daughters. We learn to notice the cracks our parents pretend not to have. For years my parents, Lydia and Patrick Vale, told everyone how proud they were of me. Their successful daughter. Their stable child. Their future hope. But here's what they never said. They were depending on my success to save them. To clean up their mistakes. To cover their secrets. To patch the holes they'd been hiding for years. And the day they found out how well I was doing, everything changed. But not in the way you think. It didn't start with a scream, or an argument, or even a request for help. It started with a silence. A strange, heavy silence that made the air in their house feel wrong. A silence that made me sit up at night with my heart pounding, wondering why my mother suddenly stopped making eye contact, and why my father kept accidentally leaving financial documents on the dining table. It started with small things, pieces of mail that weren't mine, phone calls they took outside, a locked drawer I'd never seen before, their whispering stopping every time I entered the room. First I told myself it was nothing. Parents have their secrets, their burdens, their private storms. But I was wrong. Because behind that silence, behind those strange documents, behind those locked drawers, was a decision they made without me. A decision that would change my life forever. A decision that, if I hadn't discovered it myself, would have destroyed everything I'd worked for. Because my parents didn't just betray me emotionally. They didn't just take advantage of my kindness. They signed a contract in my name. A contract worth more than everything I owned. A contract that would have put me in a lifetime of debt I never agreed to. But here's the part they didn't know. Already knew. I knew the moment they put pen to paper. I knew the day they forged my signature. I knew the second they thought they were smarter than their own daughter. And I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I didn't expose them. I watched. I listened. I gathered everything. Because quiet daughters don't explode. I calculate. Before I continue, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city below. I love seeing where my storytellers are listening from. And please, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my stories. Oh, tell me, what would you do if you found out your parents sold your future without asking you? Because for me, that was just the beginning. You see, when you discover a betrayal like that, doesn't hit you all at once, sinks in slowly, like cold water rising in a room with no windows. At first you think, maybe they made a mistake. Maybe they were desperate. Maybe this isn't what it looks like. But then, you find the second contract, and the third. And suddenly the lie becomes too heavy to excuse. They didn't forge my signature once. They did it multiple times. Savings accounts, investment accounts, a loan tied to my social security number. My future. Chopped up and sold in pieces. Like it didn't belong to me at all. But the strange part, my parents still acted normal. My mother still asked if I wanted jollof rice when I visited on Sundays. My father still gave me that fake fatherly smile that never reached his eyes. But something in me, something deep and quiet, started to shift. Because when you realize your own family can betray you at that level, you stop seeing them as parents. You start seeing them as people. People capable of damage. People capable of greed. People capable of watching you drown. Just so they can breathe. But I didn't confront them. Not yet. See, a confrontation gives them control. A reaction gives them power. A scream gives them something to use against you. Quiet daughters don't do that. We do something else. We observe. I watched how my mother flinched every time her phone buzzed. I watched how my father pretended not to see the overdue notices stacking on the counter. I watched how they whispered about me. Not with pride, but with panic. I knew they were waiting. Waiting for the day I'd offer to help. Waiting for the day I'd say, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." But that day never came. Because while they thought I was clueless, I was already 10 steps ahead. I froze every account they opened in my name. I contacted every institution they tried to access. I placed identity protection locks that not even I could bypass without a 6-digit code. And all the while, kept smiling. Quiet. Sweet Ariana. The daughter who never causes trouble. But the truth. I was building my revenge silently. Brick by brick. Layer by layer. Until the whole structure of their lies stood trapped in my hands. The breaking point came on a Friday evening. The sky was gray. The wind sharp. The kind of Vancouver cold that slips into your bones. I walked into their house, and the silence greeted me again. That same heavy, suffocating silence. Except this time, it had teeth. My mother was sitting at the dining table with her hands folded like a child caught stealing. My father looked pale. Like someone who finally realized the ground beneath him was collapsing. And then he said it. The sentence that changed everything. "Ariana. There's something we need to tell you." I leaned against the doorway. Expressionless. "Go ahead," I said. "Tell me what you've done." And even though they didn't know it yet, that was the moment they lost all their power. Because the truth they were about to confess. I already had proof. I already had screenshots. I already had recordings. I already had the lawyer. Everything was set. They thought they were revealing their betrayal for the first time. But what they didn't know was, I came to that house with one intention, to let them bury themselves with their own words. And when my father opened his mouth to speak, that was the moment my revenge quietly, silently, officially began. Rain has a strange way of telling the truth before people do. That evening in Vancouver, I sat at the edge of my parents' dining table. The same table where they taught me homework. Birthdays were celebrated. Arguments were softened with warm food. A table that always felt like safety. My mother sat across from me, rubbing her palms together. My father stared at the wood grain like the answers were written there. Neither of them could look me in the eye. "Ariana." My dad began softly, the way he used to call my name when I was little and scared of thunderstorms. "We've gotten ourselves into some trouble." I nodded slowly. Not accusing. Not angry. Just listening. I've always been good at listening, maybe too good. My mother's voice cracked. "We took some loans. And the bank wasn't willing to help us anymore. So we used your name." She said it like it hurt her to say it. And maybe it did. Maybe that was the saddest part. I stayed quiet. My silence wasn't sharp. It was soft. Soft like someone trying not to break. My father sighed deeply. "Ariana. We were going to fix it before you found out. We never wanted this to fall on you. I believed that. Or at least I wanted to." "How much?" asked gently. He swallowed. 215,000. My chest tightened but my face stayed calm. I wasn't raised to shout. I wasn't raised to embarrass my parents. I wasn't raised to throw blame like stones. So I just nodded again. They looked surprised. Maybe even relieved. That I wasn't yelling. But what they didn't know was this. I wasn't quiet because I didn't care. I was quiet because the pain was too deep for noise. My mother leaned forward, her voice trembling. "We're so sorry, Ariana. We should have asked. We should have told you. You've always been so good to us. We didn't want to worry you." That part hurt more than the loan. Because I have always been good to them. The child who worked extra hours. The daughter who brought groceries without being asked. The one who put their needs first, always. And still, this was what they chose. I didn't say that out loud. I simply whispered. "Why didn't you tell me?" My mother broke. Tears slipped down her face she tried to hide. "We were ashamed," she choked out. "We didn't want you to see us failing." My father's voice was barely above a whisper. And we didn't want to lose the house. It's the only thing we've built. I looked at them. Two people I loved deeply. Two people who made a terrible mistake, but still, in their own flawed way, were trying to hold on to the life they built. Softened. "I'm not angry," I said quietly. "I just wish you trusted me enough to tell me." My mother sobbed harder. "Ariana, we didn't think you'd ever find out. We thought we could fix it before it touched you." He nodded. Because that was the moment I realized the truth. They didn't betray me because they didn't love me. They betrayed me because they were drowning. And they thought pulling me down with them was the only way to stay afloat. And the part they didn't know, the gentle, painful truth, was that I already knew. I knew months ago. But I let them talk, let them explain, let them break gently in front of me. Because I wasn't there to punish them. I was there to understand why they chose my future instead of honesty. And as they spoke, one thing became clear. They never meant to hurt me. But they did. Quietly, deeply, irreversibly. And that pain, that soft, quiet pain, was the beginning of everything. I drove home that night with my hands gripping the steering wheel. Not tightly, not angrily. Just unsure. The kind of grip you use when your heart is carrying something heavier than your body can process. Vancouver's streetlights blurred through the windshield like melted gold. Soft, distant, almost comforting. I wasn't crying. I wasn't breaking down. I wasn't shaking. I was just quiet. Quiet in a way that didn't feel like me anymore. Quiet in a way that felt like something in me had shifted. Subtly. Slowly. Like a small crack forming under glass. By the time I got home, the apartment felt colder than usual. Not physically, emotionally. Like it already knew my life had changed. I slipped my shoes off, placed my bag on the counter, and sat on the couch. Not to think, but to feel. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't hurt because my parents made a mistake. I was hurt because they hid it. Because they decided my future was a fair price to pay for their survival. Because they believed I would never find out. And yet, I had known long before they spoke. That realization settled inside me like a second heartbeat. Slow, steady, unignorable. 3 months earlier. Long before tonight. I had already sensed something wrong. My mother's slipping eyes. My father's forced calm, papers that never belonged in the house. Numbers that didn't add up, phone calls that stopped when I walked in. I never confronted them. Not because I was afraid. But because I loved them enough to give them space to correct it. But they didn't. And that was what hurt the most. There was a soft ache in my chest. Not sharp, not violent. The kind that comes when people you love cross a line they never should have touched. I sat back, letting my head rest against the couch. The silence in the apartment felt different tonight. Not peaceful, not heavy, just honest. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "We love you, Ariana. Please don't think we did this to hurt you." I stared at the screen for a long moment. And for the first time, a thought entered my mind so gently it scared me. If I hadn't discovered the contract earlier, would they still have told me the truth today? Or would the lie have continued, and continued, until it became a life I could never untangle from? I didn't respond. Not out of anger. But because I didn't know what she wanted me to say. A part of me understood them, the fear, the shame, the desperation that drives parents into dark decisions. But another part of me, the part that had sacrificed for them my whole life, felt something else entirely. Distance. Not coldness. Not hatred. Just distance. Like the bond shifted an inch further away. And once something shifts like that, it never truly moves back. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and whispered to myself, "I'm still a good daughter. Even if they forgot I was one." That sentence, soft, almost broken, was the exact moment something inside me awakened. Not revenge. Not anger. Not rage. Just clarity. Quiet kind. The kind that doesn't scream. It simply sees. And now, for the first time, I was seeing everything clearly. Tomorrow the truth would unravel. Tomorrow, their actions would reveal their consequences. Tomorrow, the lie they built would stop being a secret. But tonight was the turning point, the moment the quiet daughter finally understood. I can love them without letting them break me. And that was the beginning of the shift. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Not because of anxiety, not because of fear, but because my body felt different, lighter, quieter, like my mind finally understood something my heart had been avoiding. I didn't rush to the mirror. I didn't check my messages. I didn't replay last night's realizations. I just sat on the edge of my bed, letting the room stay still around me, letting the truth settle without shaking me. For the first time in months, I wasn't confused. I was clear. Clarity doesn't shout. It doesn't storm. Doesn't explode. It arrives quietly, like morning light slipping through curtains. Soft, steady, impossible to ignore. I showered, dressed, tied my hair back, and stepped outside into the Vancouver cold. And the moment the wind touched my face, felt it shift. Not anger, not revenge, not heartbreak, just understanding. Understanding that the people I loved had crossed a line. Understanding that they didn't expect me to see it. Understanding that they thought the quiet daughter would remain blind. But quiet never meant unaware. I walked to the bus stop slowly. Each step deliberate. Each breath steady. Each thought sharper than the last. My phone buzzed. Mom, please come back. We just need you to sign before the deadline. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Deadline. That one word changed everything. There was no softness in that text. No apology. No understanding of what they'd done. Just urgency. Pressure. A countdown they didn't want me to see. I didn't reply. 'Cause suddenly, I knew there was more they weren't telling me. And I wasn't going to ask them. Love doesn't require blindness. And being a good daughter doesn't mean being a silent one. So instead, I went to find answers in the only place left. The company where the betrayal was born. A rideshare took me downtown, straight to Hale Acquisitions, a building made entirely of glass and confidence. The kind of place where people make decisions that ruin lives. With clean desks and steady hands. When I walked in, the receptionist gave me the kind of smile people give when they don't expect trouble. A polite, polished smile. But it faded when I said, "I'm here to see Marcus Hale." Her fingers hesitated on the keyboard. My name carried weight now. Not because of who I was, but because of the lies tied to me. A quiet phone call later, she nodded. "Go up." The elevator ride felt slow. Each floor number glowing like a warning. 14, 17, 20. Marcus Hale's office wasn't just big. It was confident. A room built by a man who believed he was always in control. He ended his call the moment he saw me. And then he smiled. Not a warm smile. Not a friendly smile. A smile of a man who thinks he already knows the ending of your story. "Ariana Vale," he said. "I was wondering when you'd show up." I didn't sit. I didn't greet him. I didn't soften the air with politeness. I just looked at him. Silence is powerful when a quiet person uses it. Finally, he gestured to a chair. "Please. I assume this is about the restructuring agreement." "Not just that," I said softly. "Everything. Everything." The word changed the temperature in the room. He studied me, measured me, like he expected fear. But fear wasn't there anymore. He explained the deal. My parents' debt, the proposal, the forged signature, the deadline that ends everything tomorrow at 4 p.m. And then, he revealed the truth. "They put up everything they own," he said, smiling slightly. "And everything tied to you. My childhood home. The land. My mother's pension bond. All hanging by a thread. A thread they expected me to fix with a signature I never gave." For a moment, just a moment, I felt the ground tilt. Not from heartbreak. From clarity. Because now I understood. Their desperation wasn't love. It was survival. And the only reason the truth slipped out was because they underestimated me. When he asked if I was here to sign, I looked him straight in the eye. No. His smile cracked. I'm not here to negotiate, I added softly. I just needed to know exactly what they risked, before I let them lose it. And that was the moment the balance shifted, completely. When I stepped outside into the cold Vancouver air, I breathed easier, because now, for the first time, I had the power, the quiet daughter, the underestimated daughter, the daughter whose silence they mistook for weakness. Not anymore. I wasn't the one trapped in their lies. I was the one holding the clock, and letting it run out. For weeks, I moved around the house like a ghost, a polite ghost. Helpful ghost. A daughter who still washed plates, still cooked dinner, still asked, "Mummy, are you okay?" Even when she knew the answer was a lie. That's the painful part about being a good child. You keep giving love even while you're bleeding, and they kept pretending. My mother smiled too quickly. My father laughed too loudly. And both of them avoided looking into my eyes. Like they were afraid I would see the truth hiding behind their faces. But the thing about truth is, it always slips out eventually. And on a cold Thursday night in Vancouver, the kind where the sky looks bruised and the wind sounds like it's warning you, everything snapped into place. It started simply. My mother asked me to go to her room and bring her glasses. Something she'd normally get herself. I went upstairs, opened the drawer beside her bed, and I froze. Because the glasses weren't the only thing inside. There were papers. Stacks of them. Folded, hidden. But not hidden enough. The same type of papers I had been pretending not to notice for weeks. First, I told myself to leave it. Close the drawer. Look away. Pretend like I always did, that I didn't see anything, but something inside me whispered, "Ariana, check." So I picked them up. And that's when my world tilted. There it was. My name. My details. My signature. Forged so perfectly it almost scared me. A loan contract. A transfer agreement. A document that handed over my financial future. And tied my life to a debt I didn't create. A debt they hid. A debt they planned for me to carry. And the worst part? It was signed 3 weeks earlier. While I was still cooking for them. Helping them. Loving them. My hands started shaking. Not because of anger, but because of heartbreak. Because in that moment, I finally understood. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't pressure. It wasn't desperation. It was a decision, a calm, deliberate decision they made behind my back, because they thought I would stay quiet forever. But as I stood there holding those papers, feeling the weight of their betrayal settle into my bones, I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't call anyone. I just whispered to myself, "So this is who they really are." And from that moment, my revenge didn't come from anger. It came from clarity. Because when you love people deeply, their betrayal cuts quietly. But it also wakes you up. And that night I woke up completely. The sky over Vancouver was still bruised from the late evening rain. Not dark. Not threatening. Just heavy. I sat by my window in silence, watching the city breathe slowly beneath the clouds. The lights reflected in the puddles like tiny warnings. And I finally understood. This was no longer about them. This was about me. My life. My future. For years I had been their perfect child. Quiet one. The responsible one. The one who smiled while they quietly cut corners and made deals behind my back. I had given them everything. Patience. Forgiveness. Trust. Love. And they still stabbed me in the back. But that pain, I refused to let it rule me. I opened my laptop. On the screen lay the folder I had been preparing for months. Containment. Inside. Screenshots of messages where they planned to get me to sign. Draft documents with my name on them and signed. Bank statements. Audio of whispered arguments they thought I hadn't heard. Every piece of evidence was labeled. Every lie time-stamped. Every betrayal catalogued. I didn't need anger. I didn't need revenge. I needed control. And now, had it. I drafted a new document. The reversal plan. Not revenge. Not exposure. Careful, surgical reversal. Everything they had tried to take from me. Everything they thought I wouldn't notice. was about to turn back on them. I reviewed Marcus Hale's contract again. The deadline, clauses, the collapsible terms. They had left a weakness. A single, quiet weakness. And I had found it. I smiled softly. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because truth finally had weight. And silence had power. I drafted a letter. Not for Marcus. Not for the courts. But for them. I know everything, it began. I have watched. Have listened. Have proof. Tomorrow at 4 p.m. your choices catch up to you. Not because of me. But because of the life you tried to rewrite without asking me. I didn't send it. Not yet. The best part of silence is that it lets others speak their own undoing. By 1:33 a.m. I finally leaned back. No shaking. No tears. No fear. Just clarity. The girl who believed in their goodness was gone. In her place was a woman who knew the rules. Who had studied the battlefield. Who had mapped every weakness. And who held the timer. The clock was ticking. And my parents had no idea I was the one holding it. 4 p.m. arrived quietly. No thunder. No lightning. Just the soft hum of my apartment heater and the ticking of the clock on my wall. Funny how big moments never feel big at first. Sometimes they whisper before they roar. I wasn't dressed for war. I wasn't dressed for confrontation. Just a soft brown sweater, hair tied back, bare face. The way I usually looked when I visited my parents. Because despite everything, despite the forged contract, despite the betrayal, despite the secret meetings with Marcus Hale, I still loved them. Too deeply. Too much. More than they deserved. I wasn't going there to destroy them. I was going there to tell the truth. And give them one final chance to tell it too. My car rolled into their driveway at exactly 4:02 p.m. The house looked exhausted. The curtains were half closed. The flower pots unwatered. The paint at the edge of the door cracked. Signs I had noticed for months but ignored. Signs of desperation they hid with "we're fine." Signs of struggle they masked behind "don't worry." Signs of parents who needed help, but chose to betray me instead of asking. I knocked once. The door opened immediately. My mother's face was pale. Eyes swollen like she hadn't slept. Hands trembling around a mug she wasn't drinking from. My father stood behind her, stiff. Like he expected a confrontation but wasn't prepared for the quiet daughter they raised. I stepped inside. No shouting. No anger. Just a calm heaviness. "Sit," my father said. But I shook my head and stayed standing. Because this wasn't their moment. It was mine. I placed a single envelope on the table. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just final. My mother stared at it like it might burn her. "What is that?" she whispered. "Everything," I replied softly. "Everything you thought I didn't know." My father tried to speak, but I lifted a hand gently. "I'm not here to punish you," I said. "My whole life, I tried to be a good daughter. I did everything right. I supported you. I listened. I trusted. And you repaid me with silence, secrecy, and a signature that wasn't mine." My mother broke first. She sank into the chair and covered her face. And the sound she made wasn't guilt. It was fear. Not fear of being caught. Fear of losing me. "We didn't know what to do," she choked out. "We didn't want to burden you. You didn't want to tell me the truth," I said quietly. "And instead, you nearly signed away my life." My father's jaw clenched. "You don't understand the pressure we were under." "No," I said softly. "You didn't give me the chance to." That silenced the room. Completely. I opened the envelope slowly. Pulled out the printed contract. My forged signature stared back at them. My mother sobbed harder. My father froze like a statue. I placed the page gently on the table. "I found the loophole," I said. "And I fixed it. You're safe now. The contract is void." Their eyes shot up in shock. "But," I continued, voice steady, "there are going to be changes. Big ones." I wasn't threatening them. I wasn't attacking them. I wasn't punishing them. I was setting boundaries that should have existed years ago. You don't make decisions in my name ever again. You don't hide things like this from me. And you don't treat my life like the emergency exit to yours. My father swallowed hard. My mother reached for my hand, but I pulled back gently. I forgive you, I said. Because I don't know how to love halfway. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. The silence that followed was different. Not tense. Not secretive. Just real. Like the first breath after drowning. I stood up. Took the envelope. Walked to the door. My mother whispered, Ariana, are we losing you? Paused. Hand on the doorknob. Heart aching. No, I said softly. You already lost the version of me who didn't know her worth. And I left. Not to punish them. Not to hurt them. But to finally choose myself. I didn't cry on the drive home. I didn't shake. I didn't replay the conversation 100 times the way I used to. I just drove. Hands steady on the steering wheel, streetlights sliding across the windshield like slow-moving ghosts, my breath calm in a way that felt unfamiliar. But right. By the time I reached my apartment, the night had deepened. That kind of Vancouver darkness that looks soft but feels heavy. Made tea. Sat on the couch. Let the silence settle. For the first time in a long time. The silence didn't feel dangerous. Felt like mine. But while my apartment held peace, my parents' home was unraveling. Back at the Vale house. The moment my car disappeared down the street, the air inside the house shifted. My mother dropped into the chair like her legs couldn't hold her. My father paced the room, running a hand through his hair again and again, a gesture I had never seen him do, not once in 27 years. Because for the first time, they weren't in control of the narrative. They couldn't twist it. They couldn't soften it. They couldn't hide behind, we did it for the family. The truth had finally stood in front of them. Wearing my face. My mother's voice cracked through the silence. She wasn't angry, Patrick. She was disappointed. Do you know how much that hurts? My father stopped pacing. His shoulders sagged. As if the weight of everything they had done was finally too heavy to stand under. We made a mistake, he said quietly. A big one. My mother's breath shuddered. No, we betrayed her. The word hung in the room like a cold draft. And they both felt it. All the lies. All the secrecy. All the whispered conversations. All the guilt disguised as parenting. All the pressure they pushed onto me while pretending I could handle it. It all came crashing down. My mother wiped her eyes, mascara streaking her cheeks. She saved us. Even after everything, she still saved us. My father sat down across from her. For a long moment they said nothing. Then he whispered something I never thought that man would admit. We don't deserve her. And the silence that followed wasn't heavy with secrets anymore. It was heavy with regret. Real regret. The kind that doesn't go away with a hug or an apology. Meanwhile, in my apartment, closed my laptop, took a slow sip of tea, and breathed. Not because I wanted to cut them out. Not because I wanted to punish them. But because healing doesn't mean going back. It means moving forward with honesty, with boundaries, and with a version of myself they can no longer take advantage of. And they knew it. Finally. They knew the daughter they once relied on blindly, wholeheartedly, naively, had grown into a woman they would have to earn their way back to. The next morning, Vancouver felt deceptively calm. The rain had stopped, but the streets were slick, reflecting neon signs and streetlights like shards of glass. I hadn't slept much. Not because I was anxious, but because my mind was still untangling every detail from yesterday. Every word, every look, every shadow of guilt that lingered in my parents' house. I was careful. Even though I had won this round, even though I had boundaries, even though I had the proof to protect myself, I still knew the world could change in a single knock. And then it came. Measured. Insistent. I wasn't expecting anyone. The delivery guy had already come earlier, and my neighbors were mostly at work. Paused, listening. Single deep breath. Then another knock. This time I walked to the door slowly. Quiet steps, controlled. every instinct sharp. When I opened it, my breath hitched slightly. Not because of fear, not because of surprise, but because of recognition. There he was, Marcus Hale. The man whose name had haunted the last month of my life, the man who could have owned my future, the man who now stood calmly at my doorstep, hands in pockets, expression unreadable. Like he had just stepped out of a meeting he already knew the outcome of. "Miss Vale," he said, voice smooth, almost polite. "Do you have a minute?" I didn't step back. I didn't smile. I didn't invite him in. "I have all the documents," I said. "Everything you need. Everything to finalize what my parents tried to force. And it's all correct, all legal, all binding." He tilted his head slightly. A faint smirk appeared. "Impressive," he murmured. "You didn't just find the loophole. You anticipated the fallout. Most people panic. Most people beg. Not you." I didn't respond. Silence, as always, was my first weapon. He glanced past me at the apartment, noticing the quiet order, the calm control, the folder labeled containment sitting on the desk. "You're prepared," he said slowly, almost in awe. "But let me ask you this. Now that it's over, now that the contract is void, what will you do with the power you've held all this time?" Pause. Collected. "The power?" I asked softly. "The power was never mine to keep. It was theirs. They handed it to me. And now they get to live with what they chose." Marcus nodded. No judgment. No lecture. Just acknowledgement. "I expected anger," he said. "Rage. Screams. Kiss. But you're something else entirely. A woman who gives too much, and yet knows when to protect herself. Very rare." I let him study me for a moment. Then I stepped aside. "The door is open," I said. "Leave it at that. My parents' mistakes are not yours to fix, nor mine to exploit. The rest is silence." He smiled faintly, turned on his heel, and left. I closed the door quietly. Not triumphant, not gleeful, just aware. Aware that the world had just tried to push me into a corner, and I had refused to bend. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe. Not relief, not victory, just the calm of a storm that had finally passed. Even though the clouds lingered, and the lessons would never leave me. By 3:42 p.m., Vancouver felt too still, too quiet, too expectant. Like the entire city was holding its breath with me. The deadline was at 4 p.m. 18 minutes. 18 quiet, echoing minutes. Standing between who I used to be and who I had finally become. I sat at my desk, fingers resting lightly on my laptop keyboard. The email draft open. The evidence folder attached. The legal clause highlighted like a silent promise. Erroneous or fraudulent consent nullifies all associated agreements. My parents' handwriting. Their forged signature. Their whispers. Their plans. Their choices. Everything was there. I wasn't sending this out of anger. Not out of revenge. Not to teach them a lesson. I was sending it because I finally understood something. You can love people deeply and still refuse to let them destroy you. At 3:51 p.m. my phone buzzed. Once. 3 times. Again. I didn't pick up. Not because I hated them, but because I finally realized that every time I answered their calls, I silenced my own voice. At 3:57 p.m. another message came in. "Mom, please Ariana, we know you're upset. Just sign today and we will explain everything. We're your parents. We love you." Love. That word used to make me cry. Now it simply made me still. Because love without honesty is not love. Love with manipulation is not love. Love with exploitation is something else entirely. 3:59 p.m. My heart didn't pound. My breath didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. Felt clear. Clearer than I'd felt in years. I hovered my cursor over the send button. Not dramatic. Not slow. Not fearful. Just ready. And at exactly 4 p.m., the moment the contract expired, I pressed send. The email whooshed into the air, Quiet, soft, almost gentle. Yet powerful enough to collapse an entire structure built on lies. It was over. Not loud. Not explosive. Just over. A strange calm washed over me. Almost like the rain outside had reached into my chest and rinsed out every last drop of guilt I ever carried for them. Closed my laptop. Stood up. And walked to my window. The city looked the same. But I wasn't. I wasn't their safety net. I wasn't their backup plan. I wasn't their financial weapon. I was simply Ariana Vale, a woman who gave everything and finally chose herself. The next day, I received an email from Marcus' legal department. Agreement dissolved. Collateral forfeited. Contract null. You are no longer attached in any form. I stared at the message for a long moment. Not triumphant. Not gloating. Just grateful that I found the courage to let the clock run out. Because in the end, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop saving the people who never planned to save you. And to anyone listening, anyone who has ever loved too deeply, anyone who has forgiven too much, anyone who knows what it feels like to be betrayed by the people you trusted the most, here is what I want to tell you. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to protect your future even when others try to sell it behind your back. And if right now, someone is writing your story for you, pick up the pen. Write your own ending. Before you go, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? And if this story touched you even a little, hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next one. Because, sweetheart, we are just getting started.